what is a plot hole? A plot hole can be described as an inconsistency or a gap in a story that contradicts the established rules or logic of the narrative. Essentially, something in a story that doesn't make sense. And whilst I love the Harry Potter books, you can definitely argue they contain some plot holes. However, given the immense cult following that Harry Potter has, dedicated readers, movie watchers, and even the author themselves have gone on the record to ruthlessly defend many of the inconsistencies that fans have pointed out in the books and try and give them explanations. But are these actually valid? That's what I'm going to discuss today. I'm going to tell you, in my opinion, the biggest plot hole in each of the 7 Harry Potter books from Philosopher's Stone through to Deathly Hallows, and explain why I think each of the plot holes doesn't make sense. But I'm also going to give you any arguments that have been made in favour of each plot hole actually being explainable, and essentially leave it up to you to make the decision of, do you think each one is a plot hole or something that actually does make sense? So let's get into this. But first, please hit subscribe, drop a like on the video and turn on post notifications. It really helps to support the account. But let's get started with the list. The Philosopher's Stone. Hagrid takes 24 hours to drop off Harry. And just like that, we kick off the list with literally the first chapter in the entire series. As most Potter fans will know, Lily and James Potter died on the 31st of October 1981. Almost exactly 24 hours later, in the middle of the night on the 1st of November 1981, is when we meet Dumbledore, McGonagall and Hagrid, and they drop off Harry at number 4 Privet Drive. Now, of course, it makes sense that it took a whole day for Dumbledore to get things in order and work out the plan of what he was going to do with Harry. And it also makes a lot of sense that they waited until night time to do this because they needed it to be secretive. What doesn't make sense though is, what on earth did Hagrid do for almost 24 hours after he picked up baby Harry? This is just an entire day that is never explained. And the reason I think it can be classified as a plot hole is because it is kind of insinuated that Hagrid just took Harry straight from the rubble to Privet Drive, which on a flying motorbike should never ever take 24 hours. So what happened? One argument I've seen is we don't know exactly what time Hagrid arrived to pick up baby Harry, so that could account for some of the 24 hours making sense, because maybe Hagrid only got there a few hours before he was meeting Dumbledore later. But what I think disproves this is that when we follow Vernon Dursley to work earlier in the chapter, at the start of the day people are already out celebrating the downfall of Lord Voldemort, which would be about 9 AM in the morning. Now that means that if most of the magical community are aware that Voldemort has fallen, you can be absolutely certain that Dumbledore has known for at least a little bit of time at that point what's happened, and wouldn't let baby Harry just lie around in the rubble for a day. So surely by this time, like 9 o'clock in the morning, at least 12 hours before Hagrid drops Harry off at Privet Drive, somebody would have gone to collect baby Harry. I think the best explanation I've seen for this plot hole is that Hagrid probably didn't want to fly during the middle of the day because that's going to look very suspicious and he'd probably be seen by muggles. But again, it just creates a little bit of an issue, because are we saying that Hagrid basically just stood in this rubble for an entire day before setting off at the start of the night? I guess it's possible, but it doesn't really make sense with the narrative we're told, which is that Hagrid went straight to Godric's Hollow, grabbed the bike off Sirius, picked up Harry and went to Privet Drive. Something in that timeline just isn't adding up. The Chamber of Secrets. Hermione solves the chamber when no one else can. Okay, so this is a bit of a fun one, because it's a topic that's been debated a lot, but therefore there are a lot of counter arguments against this. So let's break it down. As we know, Hermione Granger is the person who essentially works out what is in the Chamber of Secrets and how it's moving around. She figures out that the monster is a basilisk and that it's using the pipes to get through Hogwarts. Now, as we know, Hermione is incredibly smart, and this is a good example early in the series of her being the problem solver in the group, which is then later used for her to get them out of other situations that are similar. But where this becomes a little bit of a plot hole is because it's a little bit unbelievable, even with Hermione being as smart as she is, that a 13-year-old could solve this incredible mystery in a matter of months that literally no one else could figure out. Across 50 years, the likes of Dumbledore, McGonagall, probably some incredibly senior ministry officials had absolutely no idea what was going on, and that seems a little bit unbelievable, except there are some counter arguments. So firstly, it can kind of be explained that in the 50 years between the chamber first being opened and second being opened, that without the use of a Parselmouth to actually be able to open the Chamber of Secrets, it would kind of be impossible for someone to solve it. I'm sure that people had their theories and their guesses, but realistically, if the chamber chamber wasn't open, nobody who's not a Parselmouth was going to find the entrance and be able to get in, and the monster wouldn't be able to get out and essentially give people clues to be able to work it out. I do still think there's an argument though that during the Chamber of Secrets book, the chamber is open, the basilisk is roaming around and using the pipes, and it is a little bit strange to me that Dumbledore of all people cannot figure out what's going on, but Hermione could. And sometimes with Dumbledore it's hard because you never quite know what his priorities are. He tends to care about some things a lot more than others, but he does care about the safety of his students, and this was the big thing that was going on that year in Hogwarts. I find it hard to believe that he wasn't dedicating a lot of time into trying to work out what was happening. Again, probably the biggest argument here is just it's a great Hermione moment, and to be honest, I'm absolutely okay with that. But I do think it's fair to at least present the argument that this is a plot hole, because it just seems incredibly convenient that Hermione could use resources that were literally in Hogwarts like school books to figure out this 50-year-old mystery that nobody else even got close to. Let me know what you think in the comments. Prisoner of Azkaban, the Weasley twins never saw Pettigrew on the Marauders map. Okay, here's a fun one. I'm sure everybody has heard this before, but many fans believe it's kind of unbelievable that for over 2 years the Weasley twins owned the Marauders map at the same time that Ron Weasley was bringing Peter Pettigrew in the form of Scabbers with him to Hogwarts. That means that for over 2 years the Weasley twins had a map that suggested that their younger brother was sharing a bedroom with a man who was known to be dead. And you're seriously telling us that they never noticed? Well, actually a lot of people believe that's a fair excuse. You see, on the surface the Marauders map can open up some potential plot holes, because it could be seen as one of those items that's just a little bit too powerful and can therefore expose some lore problems down the line. But this plot hole can be argued against very easily with the idea that the Weasley twins may have either not cared enough to be looking at what their younger brother's up to at Hogwarts, or perhaps they just had no idea who Peter Pettigrew was. I guess that's very possible. Or better still, there are literally so many people in Hogwarts and they're all represented by very tiny dots on this map. Maybe they just never saw the dot that said Peter Pettigrew. This for me is the perfect example of a debatable plot hole. The idea that the twins never saw Pettigrew does seem unfeasible. However, you do have some arguments that you can present that would actually explain it not happening. In my opinion, I lean slightly towards it being unbelievable. I just think at some point they would have clocked Peter Pettigrew's name, and you'd assume that at some point they heard the name Peter Pettigrew and knew that he was assumed to be dead, given the significance of what happened with him and Sirius Black. But who knows, it's possible they just didn't. The Goblet of Fire, Harry can't see Thestrals yet? Oh, Goblet of Fire, you beauty. We finally got a plot hole that, I'm sorry, I don't care what anybody says, does not make sense. And that is that after Harry sees Cedric Diggory die, for some reason he still can't see Thestrals at the end of this book, but then can suddenly see them at the start of the Order of the Phoenix, despite the fact that he doesn't see any other deaths between the end of the Goblet of Fire and the start of the Order of the Phoenix, suggesting that it is seeing Cedric's death which allows him to be able to see them, but not at the end of this book for some reason. Now, what's really interesting about this one is we've actually had the author's input into why this happens, something that was explained after the series was finished. So apparently somebody can only see Thestrals once they have internalized the reality and finality of death. And I'm just going to be honest, I'm sorry to say it, but I think that is absolute waffle. In my opinion, that's an explanation that's been made having realised that a mistake was made in the books. The point of being able to see Thestrals is that you watch someone die, and Harry literally watches Cedric die and then can't see the Thestrals. It's just ridiculous. But what makes it even more ridiculous is that this explanation suggests that over the summer holidays at the start of Order of the Phoenix, Harry is able to successfully process Cedric's death. Now, anybody who's read the Order of the Phoenix before and knows what mental state Harry is in that book will know that is ridiculous. Harry is all over the place from the first page of that book. There is no way that if he hadn't processed the death at the end of the Goblet of Fire that he had suddenly processed it by the first few chapters of Order of the Phoenix. I mean, hey, I've given you the argument that the author makes for this making sense, but I'm going to say it here. I think this is absolutely a mistake in the books that ultimately then makes it a plot hole. I'm absolutely certain on this one. The Order of the Phoenix. How is the Room of Requirement so undiscoverable? Okay, so I enjoy this one because this basically comes down to how much you believe in plot convenience and how little or how much that sort of stuff bothers you. Because the short way of explaining this plot hole is that it's kind of ludicrous that more Hogwarts students or staff members or just anyone at the school haven't accidentally stumbled upon the Room of Requirement, given that it's simply designed to appear when somebody needs something. And let's face it, it's human nature to pretty much always need something. And you could say that it's only when you need something really important, until you remember Remember that Dumbledore mentions in the Goblet of Fire finding a room that seems awfully similar to the room of requirements, and it happened to be filled with chamber pots at the same time that he needed to use the bathroom. I'm going to tell you right now, I'm pretty sure he's referring to the room of requirements. Now, whilst I think this line is just there to be another one of those humorous Albus Dumbledore one-off lines, and also a bit of foreshadowing too, it does then create a huge plot hole when it comes to the room of requirement, because if anybody just randomly walking around Hogwarts needing the toilet could find the room, I struggle to believe that by the time the DA find it in Order of the Phoenix, and it's supposed to be this huge deal that they found this secretive room that no one's ever going to discover, that it's actually gone undiscovered for that long. Now, as I said before, this basically comes down to how much does plot convenience bother you? Because there are quite a few arguments you could make. Firstly, the room requirement is on the 7th floor, so it's not just if anyone is wandering around Hogwarts needing something, you have to be in a specific location and walk past the entrance to the room. There's also the fact that maybe a couple of people did secretly know about it, or they had discovered the room but didn't actually know what it was they'd found before. That's very possible. And there is also the unlikely idea that Dumbledore happened to stumble across another room and actually didn't discover the room requirement. All of these do seem quite convenient, but to be fair, they can be used to debunk the plot hole. I think this is all down to each reader's individual interpretation. The Half-Blood Prince, the Unbreakable Vow is too overpowered. One of the great joys of a fantasy series is when new powerful things such as items, examples of magic, or anything really are introduced that make you go, wow, that's cool. And the Unbreakable Vow is one of these things. It's essentially just a pinky promise that if the person making the promise doesn't do, they die. That's crazy. The Unbreakable Vow is introduced in the Half-Blood Prince when Snape makes an unbreakable vow to Narcissa Malfoy, promising to do all he can to watch over and protect Draco. It seems like a pretty cool addition until you realise though that this is way too overpowered of a piece of magic to just drop like that, because it opens up this massive question, which is why on earth have other people not been utilising the Unbreakable Vow? And to me it is quite a big plot hole. Why is Voldemort not making all of his Death Eaters take unbreakable vows to promise to stay loyal to him? The same thing could go to Grindelwald. Maybe the Ministry could force Azkaban prisoners into taking an unbreakable vow to promise not to escape from Azkaban. The list goes on and on, some of them more feasible than others. Obviously you could always argue about the morality of something like this, which explains why good characters maybe like Dumbledore don't use them, and probably explains again why the Ministry of Magic don't force anybody to take them against their will. But looking at villains like Grindelwald and Voldemort, who would definitely be powerful enough to do unbreakable vows, it genuinely doesn't make any sense why they wouldn't be doing this. To me, the overpowered nature of the unbreakable vow creates multiple plot holes, because as the reader they make you sit here and go, well that's cool, but there is absolutely no logic behind this not being used before by certain characters. The Deathly Hallows, Bill Weasley is his own secret keeper. Okay, we're ending on a good one. It's revealed in the Deathly Hallows book that Bill Weasley is the secret keeper of his own house, that being Shell Cottage, which seems like an incredibly logical thing to do. If you're trying to keep the place that you and your family are staying in safe, why wouldn't you trust yourself to be the person to keep that secret? Except this creates a humongous plot hole. Why wasn't everybody else doing this? Most notably, why on earth did Lily and James not do this? Bill being his own secret keeper presents a plot hole that essentially could ruin all of Harry Potter, because if Harry's mum and dad had just done this in the first place, they wouldn't be dead. It's such a random piece of information to just include in the last book like this that you just didn't need to do. You could have said literally anyone else, like Arthur Weasley for example could have been the Shell Cottage secret keeper, and that'd be absolutely plausible and would stop this confusion. But here we are. Now people have come up with some theories as to why Lily and James weren't their own secret keepers, even though it was clearly possible, and I do think there is some logic to them. Firstly, there's 15 years between the events, so maybe it was just a piece of magic that hadn't been discovered. Maybe back in Lily and James's day people didn't know that you could be your own secret keeper. I've also seen the theory, and to be honest I'm not too sure if I agree with this one, but potentially Bill was just stronger at magic than Lily and James, so was better equipped to cast the Fidelius charm and become his own secret keeper. But I don't really buy that one. I think they were both good enough at magic that if Bill Weasley could do it, they could also do the same. Perhaps my favourite argument is the idea that it's actually stronger to trust somebody else with your secret, because the only person that can share the secret is the person who holds the secret. And so if you ask somebody who doesn't really have a connection to the house and isn't going to be coming and going every single day to hold the secret, it might actually be safer than the person who literally lives there and is there all the time and coming and going when they please to hold it themselves. I think that kind of makes sense. But then Lily and James were going into hiding. It's not like they were popping to the shops every day or going for a walk and somebody would have a chance to intercept them and try and get the secret out of them. They were locking themselves in the house. Nobody would have ever been able to get to them to get the secret in the first place. So presumably they would have been absolutely 100% safe. So to me, whilst there are arguments against this one, I do look at it as a big plot hole that doesn't really pay paint Lily and James in the best light. But anyway, that's my list. Please comment and tell me what you think of my choices, and let me know if you think there are any other massive plot holes in the Harry Potter series. Make sure to drop a like on the video, and please do hit that subscribe button. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.